Okay, we're being recorded. Now I'm going to just repeat myself. So hi everyone. My name is Brianna. I was a mentor last year with Our Future is Science. Now I am a program assistant, and I'm talking to you all today about science communication as it relates to your capstone project, and then also just in general. I understand that it's on Zoom, that it is 8:04 p.m. Eastern Time. However, I will be asking questions, and I do expect at least one person to unmute themselves and chime in every now and then. Otherwise, I'm just talking to a void. And I love to hear myself talk. But it's also been a long day, and I like to have a discussion every now and then. So, as long as you see me, we see each other, and we understand that, this is going to be great. If we don't understand that, then it's going to be really boring for you, but really exciting for me because I like yapping. But without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to get started. Okay, so this is the question. Can everybody see my screen? Awesome. So I am getting my PhD currently at Virginia Tech. That's why you have to see the little C. I also have my Master of Public Health and I am CHES certified. So, a little bit about myself. Like I said, I'm a fourth year PhD candidate at Virginia Tech. I'm studying something called translational biology, medicine, and health. There's a whole entire translational spectrum of science. Starts at T0, which is like your basic bench scientist. They're working in the lab with your cells and gels. Then you see T3 and T4, which is going into clinical practice, into the community, disseminating information, things like that. So, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I like to say I'm on the fun side when I joke with my friends. But nevertheless, all the work is important. And my research is about Black women's health and wellness. And I rooted all of my focus group discussions in something called Superwoman Schema, as well as Black feminist theory. I have my MPH from Virginia Tech. I have a degree in kinesiology. I'm an Aquarius, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I'm an adult who loves Disney. I did pageants for many years of my life. I call this time of my life the Princess and the PhD. And that is just a little bit about me. All right, so like I said, wow, we have already gone to our first question where I do expect participation. So, my first question for the group is why do you think science communication is important? Put in the chat, come off mute. Yes. I forgot. I don't know who raised their hand first, but whoever like takes their hand off mute, just go
Yeah,
ahead.
first.
Uh, can I go first?
Yeah, yeah, you got it.
Okay, so I would say that science communication is important because specifically for certain communities, not everybody may have access to a proper education, specifically when it comes to health. Health information can go under science communication, and I feel like that's why science communication is so important because it allows people to know about like different scientific problems that they may be experiencing in their everyday lives. So I feel like science communication can, like somebody said in the chat, it can help bridge that gap and can allow people to solve problems on their own.
Thank you. And then the other person who has their hand raised, feel free to go off mute.
Yeah, so kind of like basically everything that Messina said, but it's a chance for the public to get more involved in science, and sometimes we underestimate the power of normal people, and because they have like free free data samples, honestly, like people who'd be willing to participate just because you shared with them some sort of information that is relevant and interesting to them. And maybe they don't have like a science degree, but maybe they have money and they can help scientists, right? And you raise awareness that way. It's like it's that public connection, I or that it's that scientific connection with the public, and sort of like that civilian scientist thing, getting more people involved, because the more people are involved in science, the more innovation there is and the more support there is for innovation. And that honestly just leads to a better world, in my opinion. So yeah, it's very important.
You said show me the money. You said communication gets the dollars. I like that. Great point. And then test that you'll be my last one.
I also want to say, to a certain extent, I feel like it can build trust between public figures and just the general public, because like science can explain why we want to, I don't know, have vaccines, why we want to wear our seatbelts. We can use that so it's not just a um faceless being telling you that you should do all these things. The science is telling us why we should be doing these things.
We all raised extremely great points, and I really appreciate the interaction. Couple of the things that really stood out to me was one, show me the money, okay, right? If we want to have these opportunities to advance science, unfortunately, we do not work for free. Therefore, we need to be able to communicate effectively to somebody who is a stakeholder who has the coins, somebody that's in a certain, I shouldn't, in an organization like a nonprofit that can give them funding. But they could just be a loaded philanthropist without a background in science. So you have to be able to communicate to them in a way that's effective of getting that point across to make sure that you can get that money to do the project that's going to move society forward. I also like the point brought up about the importance of science communication and health going hand in hand, because if people do not understand the different like science or regulations or advice coming out from a health perspective, then we're not going to feel confident nor competent to make decisions. And then I also like the people in the chat. Thank you so much. So we already answered this. It is the practice of effectively conveying scientific information to diverse audiences, and it's a way that's understandable, engaging, and actionable. It can take many forms, including writing, social media, visuals, videos, interactive discussions. So during COVID-19, Miss Rona, the coronavirus, the pandemonium, whatever you want to call it, one of the biggest gripes that I had being a person getting my Master of Public Health degree at the time is that they used too much scientific jargon that let a lot of space in for people to be scared. And then on top of that, like we know the scientific method very, very well. We understand the importance of having a research question and then going through the necessary steps. However, the general population that are not scientists, that do not remember the third grade activity where they came up with a research question, developed the hypothesis, did the research, they didn't understand that the science is changing and that's not a bad thing. I would like to argue that if we had better science communication in a way that was communicated in lay terms, effectively, cultural competently, that a lot more people would have been receptive to wearing masks, to getting the vaccine. They would not have been as scared. But when we do not communicate effectively, then we leave a lot of room for fear mongering, for disinformation, for misinformation, for distrust. And so I will always, always say, I'll belabor that point that communicating science effectively is so imperative. Otherwise, people will not feel confident nor competent to make decisions, not only for themselves, but also for their families as well. All right, so like, why does this matter? What is the why? Especially when we think about the context of creating this capstone. We're not just doing this for giggles, right? We want to make a capstone that's going to be particularly impactful in the community and effective. Something that one of my mentees did last year is that she had an opioid like education and talking about naloxone. Ooh, words are hard. In the community. And so being able to, one, take on something that was really taboo and also break it down in lay terms for the average person to understand could also destigmatize that issue while simultaneously promoting confidence within those individuals who could potentially be effective. In Southwestern Virginia, that's where she is. We have a huge opioid problem, and being able to have those discussions from an open-ended standpoint just definitely destigmatizes the issue. And also, first point, it informs public decision making on health, potential technology, and even in the environment. One of the things that she really wants to do is being able to have that medication in a first aid kit, because at the end of the day, you are administering aid if there is an emergency, and that does not and should not be taboo. Also, like so many people said, it's going to build trust in science and combats misinformation. By being able to have a discussion like that, one, again, like I said, it's going to destigmatize that issue and something that should not be taboo, because so many people are unfortunately impacted by the opioid crisis within this country, especially in Appalachia. On top of that, somebody spoke to the importance of bridging that gap. When you are communicating science effectively, particularly with health as well, it's important that it empowers the communities. I cannot remember off the top of my head, But you need to make sure that your literacy level when communicating health in particular, I believe it's like at an elementary school level. If someone wants to Google that for me, I would appreciate it, and then you can put it in the chat. But the easier it is for people to understand the material on that brochure, on that pamphlet, on the website during an oral conversation, the better off you will be to inform that decision making, to build trust, to empower community. And then also, like somebody said, we need to communicate to get the money, because if we don't get the money, then we do not have the funding to move the project along. If we can't move the project along, then we cannot have that data that's going to hopefully drive positive change within the community. All right. In cute letters, like we already said, good science communication builds trust between scientists, experts, and the public. All right, so another question. What are some key considerations for science communication? So we kind of already touched on this, but like what are some things that come to mind when you think about like, okay, how can I effectively communicate this science the data that I just found, my capstone project, this health project? Like what is something that just comes to mind for you about what are some key considerations for communicating science? Knowledge of audience, absolutely. If anyone wants to just go off mute.
Yeah, I would like to kind of second that, knowing your audience, because I feel like a lot of the times that's going to change, and not only like figures you might want to show, overall information, like the whole story of what you're trying to show, but also directing to the overall local community that this is impacting your individual community here at a smaller scale that they might not be aware of.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for that. If anyone else wants to chime in, information has to be sourced, based, or tested. Absolutely.
The feelings of the audience towards the matter should also be taken into account.
Absolutely. I want to say one thing, but I don't want to take someone else's turn if anyone else was going to come off mute. So when I took global health when I was a freshman in college, we had a project. And of course, my professor gives us a wicked problem coupled with different parameters of beliefs and belief systems. So one of the hypothetical situations based on real data was a teenage pregnancy within a country that is primarily Catholic. And that country does not believe in contraceptive. And so being able to have to like navigate different ideas on what to do in this situation to help decrease the rate of teen pregnancy while also keeping in mind those different cultural differences, beliefs is so imperative within science communication, health communication, and also if you have aspirations of being in the field. Because the last thing that we want to do as scientists is to continuously perpetuate harm, which we know has been done continuously with different communities. And on top of that, you want to be able to be engaging in a way that, again, is empowering and also is going to build that trust with the audience and the population you intend to serve. And I also want to say thank you for Tess for putting in the literacy level in the chat. Science communication or health communication should not exceed a 6th grade reading level. All right, so we already started talking about this, but knowing your audience is so imperative for the principles of science communication, tailoring content for priority populations. I'm a Gen Z, I'm a Gen Z millennial, so I dabble in between. That being said, I would not say like girlies in my science communication or my health communication if I'm talking to somebody in an older generation, and vice versa. I would not, those little cute like Valentine's Day things that we saw last week, something about like you make my cardiac rhythm like slay or something. I don't know, that's not going to land for an older generation. So it's really important that we consider the content of the priority population and tailor it for that. Use storytelling to make science relatable. If anybody is big on reading, there's this really good book called Weekend Language. And it's thin, it's an easy read, but it talks about the importance of effective communication through storytelling and less just on data and facts. And so that allows you to build that human connectivity as well as be relatable. And you might even like sneak in things in a way that people, it's less intimidating for people. You also want to be able to leverage visuals and multimedia. Also, at the same time, all of these things might not be possible in one package, right? But these are the considerations. So, if you're going to do something oratory, like an oral argument, a speech, or whatever, you might not be able to have those visuals, but you can incorporate storytelling. You can make sure that the content is tailored to the audience and to the priority population and the people that you intend to impact. All right, so knowing your audience in the context of your capstone is very vital. Like I said, you might not use the Gen Z slang with like the Gen Xers, and you might not use the Gen X terms with the Gen Z, or like I don't even remember what comes before or after that. I know they say like mewing and stuff. I don't know. I got on the weird side of TikTok and I didn't know what language they were speaking. That being said, identifying your audience is so imperative. Again, I cannot say that enough. Hopefully, you'll remember that I'm wearing a pink and green shirt today. I'm a little funny in that have to identify your audience when communicating science. That is so vital. Something to consider, different considerations. What is their current level of science knowledge? So if you're going to be talking to, let's say, a cardiologist, you might not have to go through what like the heart is and like why it's important to health to a cardiologist in the same way you might be talking to like a 10-year-old about the importance of physical activity because it improves heart health, right? Like those are two wildly different people, even though the subject is still the same. Something that's also important, like let's say you want to talk to a policymaker or somebody that can move policy along, or you want to get that money, like that person said in the beginning, maybe look at the website about what that nonprofit or that philanthropist tends to fund. Or maybe you look at the politician's website to understand what are some key issues to them, what do they campaign on, what are their initiatives. Try to pick something that's relevant or relatable or interesting for that audience identification or to get that money. Also, like think about how can this be made fun, relevant, or interactive for them. We all get lectured at school to a certain extent. No one wants to do that too, or like listen to that if you're trying to move a message along. That's why you saw those like really funky like got milk campaigns with celebrities on them. That's why when you think about like if you ever, I don't know if Teen Nick was still a thing. I might be dating myself, but when you saw like the campaigns about not smoking or like drunk driving, things like that, like it was it was weird and then it got like very dark and serious very fast. It reeled you in with a story, but then you remember it. So you like think about how you can relay a message that's going to be relevant or fun or interactive or really is going to pack a punch. It's also really important, depending on the capstone and depending on where you want to go with this. Again, going back to one of the points I made earlier about my former mentee, is that she had to go and talk to the administration of the school to see if they had any decision making or influencing power to get certain things implemented based on her capstone project. Also, unfortunately, you might hear the word no. Hopefully, you've already heard it once in your life and you've already experienced it, but that doesn't mean you give up. But it is vital to have also that confidence within yourself to pitch it to that person in a way that's effective for them to understand. So, most likely, somebody that's going to have like position of power, money, things like that, they're going to be a little older. Therefore, making sure your grammar is correct in an email is so important. Making sure that if you meet them in person or on Zoom, like you're not in bed, you're a little put together, you brushed your hair, have good lighting. That all impacts and can impact a decision making when it comes to moving your health, your science, your projects along. Also, thinking about who has the influence in the decision making also shapes the effective communication strategies. Unfortunately, politicians, depending on how high up you go, or influential leaders, you're probably not going to have access to them. Therefore, you'll need to look on their websites and also consider like their admin, their personal assistants, things like that. And this also helps you navigate the various barriers that may persist when you're looking at the influence in the decision making. So let's say that you really want to talk about the importance of gun safety and you look at your local representative's website and realize they campaign on protecting the right to bear arms, that might not be the best avenue to go in. You might need to look at a nonprofit that wants to talk more about gun safety than going to that politician in order to move your project along. And also, it's important to identify the key allies as well as the change makers. Oh, wow, look, another question. So anyway, what are some of the outputs you were planning on for your capstone project? I mean, at a minimum, I do know you all have a capstone project. So, like, somebody needs to start talking or putting it in the chat.
I can share if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so my team is team 6, and our capstone essentially is about artificial sunlight in school buildings, especially low income school buildings. So, the school that I go to, I wouldn't say we're low income, but we have a really old building, and 16 out of the 83 classrooms at our school don't have windows. It's just harsh LED lights, and it affects the physical health and the mental health of our students. And there's scientific like data to prove that. So we've had like people at the Student Board of Education testify and say, hey, like maybe you should speed up our renovation, like prioritize us, but they're not. And I know why they aren't. It's because we don't have scientific data to support it. So I'm hoping what my capstone will do, at least for my school, is that will like give them data and give them a reason to actually care, because once statistics and once like numbers are in your face, they're really hard to ignore. And the output that we're planning is a documentary style video where we basically take data, show our process of our like quasi experiment, which is like installing windows in this like not windows, sorry, installing the artificial lamps that are the artificial sunlight lamps in our classrooms. So showing that whole process and then interviewing people so we get quantitative data and as well as qualitative data. And that way we have a video that still, because like my partner, he's in New York and I'm in Maryland. And that way we can showcase two different schools at the same time within like the same project. So that's kind of our output. And we could send it anywhere. Like we could put it on social media, we could send it to schools, we could send it to the Board of Ed, we could send it to OFIS. So that's kind of what we're thinking to reach a broader audience at least.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I also really like how you said like we need data. Like as much as you can, let data drive you because data is going to help influence those decision makings because like you cannot argue with the facts. You can't argue with the facts. And so love the mixed methods approach as well. I'm a mixed methods researcher. So thank you so much for sharing. Does anyone else quickly want to share what they're thinking for their capstone? Okay, cool. So for the next few slides, I'm just going to pick on myself. So we're going to start first with blog posts and written content. So this is an article that I wrote on my website about the silent strain of heart health and the weight of strength on Black women. My website is called Becoming Healthy Her, and also if you have your phone, you can scan the QR code. Otherwise, there will be stuff sent out later where you can access all of this. But for blog posts, written content, articles, newsletters, opinion pieces, things like that, blog writing, as someone who likes writing, blog writing or just writing in general allows for in-depth exploration of topics. And also it helps you establish credibility through like leadership and science as well. And it can encourage engagement through comments and social shares. Dating myself again, it's fine. But when I was like in high school or middle school, everybody started being like a WordPress blogger. And I'll never forget like sharing things on Pinterest and just looking for people that were building up their following as a voice and as like a thought leader. And so blog posts are definitely a very effective way to communicate science as well as for your capstone project. I know every year there's always a couple of groups that do different blog posts that do like websites, things like that. But things to keep in mind is like you want to start with a strong hook. Starting with a question or like a little anecdote or a stat, right? Hook the reader in. We learn about these things in English class, like the same rules or the same ideas apply when it comes to science communication, when it comes to writing. Also, like using a conversational tone depending on the audience, okay? Depending on the audience. With the blog post I just did, I definitely used more of a conversational tone. I was writing to Black women, and so I kind of wanted my voice to shine through. I didn't need also to have a ton of scientific jargon, but when I did talk about things like allostatic load, which is the prolonged stress on a person's body, I broke it down in a way that was easy for them to understand as well while still maintaining the integrity and the factual information of what that statement and what that fact means. It's also you can use different visuals and infographics, but most importantly, it's important that you make science relatable with real world examples, and also do not forget to cite your sources. Cite your sources, do not plagiarize. Make sure you're doing a reference page also. Then also end with a call to action, because at the end of the day, you need to tell people what to do. Not in like an authoritative figure way, but it's like you just dump this information on them about this various like health topic. Well, what's next? Is it just to doom and gloom? I hope not. Or is it a call to action? Like, book a doctor's appointment, talk to your friends more about like their experience with therapy, talk to other kids in schools that have more access to windows, and like if they went about doing a project to make sure that their classes had more natural light, how do they go about doing it? Like make a call to action to make sure that this just not a waste of time, but people know what to do with this information. I like to say that like you can't say the house is on fire without providing water. Otherwise, like what's the point? All right, social media, Instagram. Like I said, I did pageants. And so I scrolled for a little bit and pulled up some things from the pageant Instagram page that I used to have access to. And these are some infographics that I made. Two of the pictures are about mental health. So the first one, the one on the far left, was the carousel that was in for the second one. And then I also have an infographic here. And so the Let's Talk About Mental Health was really important because at the time, there was a woman that was very open about, she unfortunately passed due to her mental health battles. And so just being in the position that I was in as a Black woman in pageantry, I thought it was really important to have this conversation. So that was like my relevancy in the timely matter of posting this. Um, so static Instagram posts. Visual appeal helps break down the complex topics. I put a really pretty picture of a flower that said like, let's talk about mental health, not like I don't know, we're in block letters in red and I'm like, let's talk about mental health. That's alarming versus like a flower. It's pretty. You're like, oh, she's inviting me in. Also static Instagram posts. I don't think anybody here is probably on Facebook. The younger audience tends to be on like a Snapchat and Instagram. I don't know what else the girlies are using these days, but I know that it's not Facebook. But whatever you all are using, and if you're interested in like doing your capstone in this way, it can engage like a younger audience as well as diverse audiences. Of course, there's interactive features to boost engagement and learning, like hashtags. Someone is really good at the algorithm and you know like the different changes that are happening or like trending sounds, things like that. You always can incorporate that. It is also good for like micro learning and science in everyday life. TikTok, which we're going to get to, has like overtaken Google for people looking for information. Therefore, there's so much evidence that supports that people are looking at social media for pertinent, up-to-date information for their news. So, as thought leaders, as people doing their capstone, I don't know a better place to like potentially put some of your work out there than like Instagram or social media or things like that. It also encourages sharing. You know that we have like the story feature. You can DM people, you can send a link via chat or whatever. Like it really encourages sharing for the information. There's also things to keep in mind too. You're going to see a lot of different like overlaps here. One, you want to start with a strong hook, like, like let's talk about mental health or something in the caption, things like that. There's also a variety of ways you can engage your audience on Instagram. I would say still use a conversational tone. I mean, I don't know if anybody follows like the John Hopkins public health account, but they're funny and they definitely use like a playful or like conversational tone. Of course, use visuals and infographics, and you get again have a call to action. At the end of that carousel, I had resources available if anybody was struggling or needed to reach out. There was also one where I made like, is laughter the best medicine? And I had some data up there, some facts, and I was like, if you're having a bad day, one of my favorite things to do is watch cats being scared by cucumbers. You will laugh. It will also improve your mental health for a little bit in that time as well. So I would say always end with a call to action as well. Videos. We love short form-ish content. So these are 3 examples. 2 are TikTok. One's an Instagram reel. I have, throughout my PhD journey, I have documented some of the things on TikTok, some of my thoughts, things like that. So I am going to quickly play part of the video, I think, if it loads. Yeah, okay.
Genetics and generational trauma.
I don't know how to go back, so I'm so sorry.
I've been thinking about this for a hot minute. So, hi everyone, my name is Breana. I'm a PhD candidate studying translational biology, medicine, and health. And my focus groups are surrounding Black women's health and wellness. And that's what my dissertation and my research topic is all about. Y'all like to tussle in the comments? Let me go ahead and say this. I'm talking about Black American women in the United States of America. I'm specifically in the United States of America. And this is just my analysis and my thought process. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying this are my thoughts. Now let's get into it. So like this idea that you can't sit still, right? Like you don't need to be resting if the house is not clean. I'm bored, so I'm gonna go get another degree. I think that it's generational trauma in epigenetics because on the plantation, yes, I know Black history does not start with slavery. Don't start with me. But on the plantation, Black women were often regarded as harder workers than the males. On top of that, the plantation owners viewed Black women's work ethic higher than the males. However, they never promoted the women. So like right then and there, I'm like, ooh, interesting. Twice as hard, half as much. Okay. Now let's think about like after slavery, antebellum era, Jim Crow era. Black women were just working so hard on the plant, in the plantation, in the house, da 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 da. But now, for some reason, the government thinks that they are welfare queens. So now they have to be a superwoman, be the strong Black woman to combat that trope. So now we are still working extremely hard. Do you see where I'm going with this? Keep up with me. Keep up with me. So during World War II, in South Carolina specifically, they made it illegal for Black women to not work because they did not have any good example of what it meant to be a stay-at-home mom, to be a stay-at-home wife, to not work. So by law, Black women in South Carolina had to go to work. I'm just saying, I really think that it's like epigenetics, passed down trauma. I'm not saying also that it's not a good thing to get your degrees. I'm not saying it's not good to work, but I'm just saying, I think there could be some like passed down trauma there. What do you think? Let me know. Okay, bye. And also what you're not going to do is tell me to read a book. Okay. What you're not going to do is tell me that I need to read some more. Because we all need to read some more. That's the problem. We're not reading enough. And there's more to this conversation than this 3-minute video can provide. Bye.
Okay, so with that video, if you can't tell, I have a lot of personality. But aside from that, in the beginning, I did not cut the audio on in time, but I started with a question. And my question, or like my call to action, I guess, like draw people in the hook. I said, I think Black girl boredom is tied to epigenetics. Like, what do you think? And so on TikTok, my algorithm, I have interior design, Black women, and puppies. It's very carefully curated. I love that for me. I don't really want to get off. So with my audience, I knew that would reach like the Black women on TikTok, which is why like it just makes sense. So epigenetics passed down trauma, basically because I was inside my mom, who was inside my grandma, great grandma, things like that trauma is passed down. And so Black girl boredom is like a on my For You page. Basically, it means like Black women are bored, just gonna go get another degree. It's very funny, but also at the same time, I'm like, ooh, I wonder if there's a broader discussion here to talk about the fact that we have never been allowed historically to just sit still, to sit down. That also ties into my research, which I talked about like superwoman schema and how Black women want to or have had to combat those various tropes due to the pervasiveness of racism and sexism in society. So that was like my whole big thing that I did in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, which was not that easy, but it was still fun. Also, like the call to action at the end, what do you think? Let me know. That kind of went like baby viral. I think it has like 200 something thousand views and like a lot of comments. Also, like I had to turn my anti-bullying on because people on the internet are really crazy. But that's besides the point. But we had like really interesting conversations. I know that that video has been in like newsletters that people have sent me and people have seen it. So also something to think about that I know that we get really hung up on numbers, but even if you're getting, and like most of my videos are only just like 500, 600 people, think about how many people are in like your high school, right? Like that's still a decent amount of people that are engaging in your content. It's so easy to look at a number and be like, "Ah, that's not a lot." But like do you even go get across like 100 people when you go to like Food Line? I don't know, but to think about like in your auditorium or at a football game, that's how many people just viewed your videos. So it's not necessarily about like how many views you get, but it's about that audience and that community and who's engaging with you. So I just want to like put that out there because I know that some things are a numbers game, but the benefits of TikToks and Reels, they're quick and engaging, high retention rates. It's also really ideal for social media algorithms. If you can get caught in that algorithm, which we know it's kind of random, your stuff's going to circulate. So I can continue to say this, but start with a strong hook. Use the conversational tone. You might have to like, I don't want to say overdo it, but people like, being brought in. That's why you'll see videos of people being like taking a sip of water and just talking. You're like, wait a second, did I miss something beforehand? Like, I just got plopped in here mid-conversation. Or something I also like doing, particularly when it comes to health in a non-intimidating way. I have so many different videos where I'm like getting ready and I'm like doing my makeup and I start with like, let me tell you about maternal health and Black women's health and wellness. Or like, let me tell you about my PhD journey. Or like, let me talk to you about public health. But I'm like, I'm doing like a full beat. I'm about to go to an event. But it draws people in because it's not intimidating. It's different. So like you can find your thing when you're doing your capstone project and like just if you're interested in science communication or like you want to be a scientist or researcher and communicating is imperative. Otherwise, like what's the point of everything that you did for somebody just to read it in their office? No, we want to do more than that. All right, this is the longest one. I'm not going to show the video. However, like I said, links will go out. If somebody has like their phone to scan the QR code, this is a talk I did many years ago about called Sis Throw Your Cape Away. This actually was like the origin story of my PhD. And that's what really got me going with my dissertation topic. But this whole entire conversation or discussion presentation is 40 minutes long. And so I did videos as well as oral presentations together because they're very similar, long form videos and oral presentations, very similar concepts, things like that. Wow, like, oh my God, there's so many like interesting things to keep in mind that we haven't already seen. But if you haven't gotten this by now, I don't know if you will ever get it. But just some benefits of the videos and oral presentations. It's going to allow for a more in-depth discussion about the topic at hand. That TikTok video was like 2 minutes, 30 seconds, okay? Versus like something that's longer, you're going to be able to be more in depth with the conversation. You're going to be able to like have a question and answer session, do that discussion that would have been virtual in real life. It also can build a stronger personal connection with people, and it may create better retention and recall for audience members. We know this is a very like microwave popcorny generation and time period where people want to watch a video in like a 2 times speed. And unfortunately, with an oral presentation, you cannot fast forward yourself. Therefore, people will have to like really listen, potentially zone out, but you might create better retention for audience members. But with that, keep your energy up as much as possible. Like, don't be afraid to, if you're in like real life, if you leave a podium, like walk around, be engaging, draw people in, have personality, storytell, things like that. There's so many different ways to make sure that you are still keeping like high energy and also conveying your point. In fact, it's definitely preferred. Like I said before, I did pageants, and nothing is more nerve-wracking than like honestly middle school students and elementary school students because they just say anything. They say anything to you and they don't have attention span. So I have this presentation called What's Up Doc, where I go into classrooms to talk about the importance of being healthy and also viewing your doctors as like a team member and as a support system like your parents or your teachers, because you're allowed to ask them questions, you're allowed to talk to them, you're allowed to present them with concerns even at a young age. And so with that I was like, oh God, like are they gonna get it? Like I'm a little nervous, they're scary, little kids are scary, but they were engaging, they did ask me questions, and also most importantly I do believe they were able to put those things into practice. And so, even though the presentation was long and it was right before recess, which is also a spooky, scary time because they wanted to go. They were very antsy. They still were able to retain that information. And even still, I don't know what the oral presentation you may be giving for your capstone is, but you can have like we did role playing. So I had somebody be like Princess Tiana, who just kissed her frog, but unfortunately now she has the flu. And so she had to present her symptoms to me, who was the doctor at that time. And so being able to have like something interactive like that can also be very engaging for your audience, as well as maintain that retention and recall later as well. I lost my mouse, guys. Okay, there it is. All right. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns, and or emotional outbursts about what has been shared today? Any discussion? Either you guys are tired or I did a good job. I'm gonna go with the latter.
You did a great job, and like your videos are awesome. And also, I am kind of tired, but like you kept me engaged.
Appreciate the honesty. Listen, we are people who show up to do the work. It's Friday Junior. I get it.
I was really inspired by your TikTok video because I realized that I have spent a lot of time on social media, like scrolling through, and those videos are the ones that catch my attention. And I always learn something new, and I realized like that's the template of something that I want to do, related to my output. So that's honestly something like basically the template of what I should do because I was engaged, and I bet a lot of other students, which are my output, and also honestly anyone would also be very engaged with those kind of videos too.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. And something that I love about OFIS, and especially this capstone, is the ability to think outside the box like that, right? Like, would you have thought about doing a TikTok video to like present science information? I don't know. But like to be able to see it in real life like that and be like, oh, I can apply that. And also in a space that's like safe like this, that wants that innovation. Absolutely. And like I said, people are turning to TikTok for their news and information more than Google. So, like, clearly, there's a reason to do a capstone there.
Do you remember at the beginning, we looked at AOC, the representative from New York, doing it was an Instagram video and a TikTok video that was super interesting. And I think, part of what we thought was great about it, other than her being an amazing communicator, is that she's very well known. So she can draw attention to something. But I think you saw tonight that Breana is getting well known and can have viral videos without being a public figure like that. So it's the personality, the style. And Sai has a question for you, Breana.
So that question is, I'll say it out loud. What do you think is the most effective social media form or outlet that we could use if we're doing social media campaign for a capstone? I think it depends, right? Like if you're trying to build up a little brand right now, I would definitely turn to Instagram just because I feel like Instagram and Instagram Reels are like the more sophisticated cousin of TikTok. Like TikTok's like the fun side of the family. You never know what you're gonna get, meaning you never know what's about to go viral on TikTok. That doesn't mean it's not like cool or fun. You just like it's really spontaneous. Versus Instagram might allow you to build up that better like brand and reputation. You'll be able to have those static posts, the reels. You can make like highlights up there without having to get to like 10,000 followers on TikTok. And on top of that, you can put more links, you can do more things in your bio versus TikTok. So You also can take a similar format. I do believe now on Instagram, you can have more than 90-second reels. So that's better for long form content. But I definitely think that probably Instagram and being able to utilize the mixed media approaches of like static, carousel, reels, things like that would be great for your capstone, and TikTok could supplement. But also like advice is like not take it or leave it, but like take what you need, leave what you don't, like when you're shopping at a grocery store. But I really appreciate that question.
I'd love to challenge people to say what you thought was so effective about Brianna's TikTok. You can unmute yourself or put it in the chat. I'll start by saying the liveliness of her presentation. There are many things, but I'll start that struck me the first that's what, as Shalisa said, sort of kept us awake. Anybody else? I'm sure that you have many reasons because I can rattle them off, but maybe someone else. Yep.
For me, I think Breana is an interesting person and a very good communicator. But I'm trying to catch up. It seems she talks very fast. So for me, I'm trying to catch up like but honestly, it's interesting and especially the TikTok or social media of a thing. I'm not really on TikTok like that, but for some reason, if I want to get like the raw information, maybe I hear it news or something, I go online, maybe the news are here to give us the information. I just go to TikTok, I just type the keyword, and I begin to see, direct information about what's going on. And I see that people are using that, and it's a medium to, communicate to a particular set of people. So that's amazing to know. So thank you once again, Breana.
And Tess wrote, felt like a conversation you would have with a friend in terms of language and tone. And Sai wrote, you never stop talking, keeping your audience engaged by making sure you don't drop their attention. Really effective. What about Brianna's knowledge? Was she just riffing or did she come to it prepared?
Yes, I would say she come to it prepared. I just want to, round that up. I mean, she has a good knowledge about the subject matter. You can say it. So absolutely amazing. So definitely.
Did you script it, Brianna?
I didn't. That was off the dome.
But you had your talking points in your head and you'd done your
Yes,
research.
yes, for sure.
Years worth of research, might we add,
Well,
but
at
yes.
that point, yeah.
So you can riff when you have years of research.
I'd also like to say there's nothing wrong with the script, though. There's nothing wrong with the script.
Okay, and Araceli, so she went straight to answer her question without using very technical, complicated jargon, which made it easier to digest.
I appreciate that. Something that I've said a lot with like my science community or with my PhD friends is like we need to check our ego because at the end of the day, if we want the science to be important, not just to get published in Nature or just not to get published in a journal, we need to make sure that it's actually obtainable for people to understand. And again, if science and health communication is not in a way where people feel confident nor competent, then like what was the point of everything that we just did? What is the point of this capstone if it's not going to be digestible for people to understand, if it's not going to reach that target audience, that priority population? Not that it was all for nothing, because you obviously got some great skills out of it. You learned a lot. But if the idea is to impact community, which is what OFIS is about, then we need to make sure that we're reaching our communities, right? Doesn't even have anything else they want to share.
I kind of want to just say one last thing. I know I was talking a lot during this meeting, but I think, and I think other people have said this more, but I feel like what you're doing with like TikTok and YouTube and Instagram is really inspirational because I know like for someone like me, I am only a nerd when it comes to the things I'm interested in. So when someone's talking about like AI or like the intricate like details of our nervous system, I'm not going to understand. But like when you break things down in very simple jargon for people to understand, it just makes it more interesting because now it's like I feel like a barrier that stops people from like understanding science is that they can't understand it. But when people like you really simplify it and make it easier for people like me to understand, it's really beneficial. So like please keep doing what you do, and it's really awesome, and I really hope you like actually go viral and like be more popular, and I can definitely see you that way. So yeah, thanks for that.
Well, you guys will learn all these lessons and use them to apply whatever output you choose. I can, you can take lessons from what Brianna shared tonight and apply them to just about everything.
I also would like to say too, I know that this is like for a capstone project, but let's say like later on in life or when you get to college, um, you don't have to pick a lane. You do not have to pick just like the science box or like the basic science box or whatever, the engineer, but you don't have to do that. When I tell people I've competed in pageants and I'm also getting my PhD, they're like, "Well, that's wildly different." And I'm like, "Yeah, and that's okay. Boxes are meant to be broken." I like to say that it's not my responsibility to fit inside the box society wants to define for me. And some people come for the pageant content, some people come for the science content, but I have kind of merge them together because that's who I am. We are the Prince and the PhD. So there is nothing wrong with like merging your interests together. Your whole person. You're allowed to have different things that you are passionate about. You're allowed to have different things you're interested in. I mean, one of my friends in my cohort is very interested in dance, and his research is about the impact of dancing on people with ADHD and how dancing could be an effective coping strategy or intervention for ADHD. And so he still dances every now and then and conducts research in the lab. You're allowed to have multiple different interests that come together or don't, but you're a whole person. Oh, thanks for telling me I sounded excited. I get very excited. Um, well, we have 5 minutes left, and I do have one more slide, but they're just key points that we have talked about, that we have discussed, that I've said multiple times. But for your capstone project, think about the modes that will be the most effective for delivering and representing your project and the message you're conveying. I'm not saying anybody is doing this, but I am saying that it probably wouldn't make sense to be on a podcast to talk about CPR and doing a demonstration because no one can see you, right? And so just making sure that the mode matches what you're actually like going to do, make sure it makes sense. We've said this multiple times. You know this, I know this. The presentation says it, but effective communication helps bridge the gap between complex science and community. If we are doing all this great science, but we're only giving it to the other people who understand everything or just doing journal articles, then like what was the point? For me, that's not enough. For this capstone project, that's not enough, and definitely not for OFIS. We are trying to impact our communities positively, correct? Then, of course, you want to tailor the message by understanding your target audience and not only aim to educate, but also inspire action, because that call to action is so, so, so important and imperative, not only with OFIS, not only with this capstone project, but also later on in life when you guys are amazing, like future leaders, movers, and shakers, and all the things. You want to inspire that action. So yeah, I'm done with my presentation.
Thank you. Can everyone just make sure that you fill out the attendance form? It's in the chat several times. And please feel free to unmute and thank Brianna and or put it in the chat and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you so much.
you.
Have a good night.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna.